What's up, gamers? So the black market just ended a few days ago, but this does not mean that it's gone forever. Black market will return, and today I'm here for several reasons. I'm gonna review this year's black market, what was good and what was bad, but I'm also gonna try and predict what tanks will appear in the next year's black market. I am gonna divide this video into 3 separate parts. Part 1, 2021 Black Market Review, simply talking about this year's black market and our opinions about it. Part 2, Rare Tanks and Oddities, exploring all sorts of rare and mysterious tanks that are lurking in the game files in an attempt to draw a clearer picture of what we can expect from the next year's black market. And part 3, Black Market 2022 prediction. From what we have learned from this year's black market, and by looking at what rare tanks from part 2 seems most plausible to appear, we are gonna make a rough estimate of what we might expect from next season of black market. Also, if you have not seen our last year's black market video, I suggest you do, as much of the conclusions we will draw in this video will also be based on the information that we managed to gather in that video. Link to that video will be in the description below and in a card above. So, without further ado, let's dive right into part 1. Let's go through all the offers individually and give a small comment about them. Take note that these are the offers from EU, so the numbers will change depending on what region you are in. The first offer was a TL1 LPC, also known as the Offspring tank, in an auction of minimum bid of 3 million credits in 12,000 units. People seem to be able to claim this tank for at least around 6 million credits, which is a great deal for free-to-play players. For veteran players, I would not deem this vehicle more than a collector's tank or a cool tank if you're a fan of the Offspring. The second offer was the M10 RBFM at a minimum 300 gold auction in 25,000 units, which is quite interesting as this vehicle is a bond shop vehicle. This has some implications that we will talk about later. The M10 is a really good tier 5 premium, so getting this tank for a reasonable amount of gold is nice. Although, if you could get any other premium for credits, that's obviously a much better deal. The third offer was the Turtle 1 for a direct sale of 6 million credits in 9,400 units. This sale was a complete clusterfuck, however, a vast majority only received error messages when trying to buy this tank, most likely because literally thousands upon thousands of people clicked that buy button at the exact same time, and the server simply could not handle it. This resulted in such a flame war that the World of Tanks forum got shut down, lol. The fourth offer was a black market theme skin for the E50M for 255 gold in 55,000 units, and apparently most people actually got it for just 256 gold, so that's a nice meme, lol. And then we get to the real meat. It was kind of satisfying seeing this tank, as we had predicted this tank to be in the market a year ago. The WeSaid 111 Killin, I don't know, whatever, QL, for a minimum of 15 million credits auction in 9,000 units. We bid kind of astronomical numbers for this thing, around 50 million, but it seemed as if around 26 million credits were enough to get it. Now, it has to be made clear that this thing is in gameplay an exact copy of the tech tree WeSaid 111.5A. This is contrasting to the Chinese server version, which has more alpha damage than the tech tree version. Wargaming actually cares about balance. Who would have thought? So you are not buying any exclusive gameplay features for this. However, what you are paying for are 1. A 3D style, 2. An exclusive fire breathing effect when the gun fires, and 3. A crew trainer for your Chinese heavy tanks, as you can transfer crew in this thing without retraining. Also, let's say you have not even touched the Chinese tech tree at all, because you are not really hyped about grinding through it. This deal could be an easy ticket to getting to the tier 10 WeSaid, although for a pretty meaty price. At the end of the day though, I would probably categorize this vehicle as simply a collector's vehicle, just bragging rights, you know. The sixth offer was a Skoda T27 for a minimum 5,600 gold auction in 15,000 units. Although the vehicle is perfectly fine, the gold auctions are kind of underwhelming when there are so many credit auctions around. Certainly one of the more mediocre offers. Although if you manage to get this tank for around 6 to 7k gold, I'd say it was worth it. The 7th offer was another legendary tank, the A32, which we had also predicted to be in this season of Black Market. The tank was a direct sale going for 7,500 gold in 3,600 units. It was kind of the same story as with the Turtle one. It felt like as if it was pure RNG that gave it a tank or not. Eden and I recorded ourselves and our results were quite contrasting.
Say starting in 4 seconds. Come on. Don't let me down, game. Purchase. Yes! I got it! Yes! Ah! I am so happy! Ah!
Wargaming, this is f***ing bullshit. All in all, this is pretty much just a collector's tank, so if you are a collector and didn't get the tank, I feel very sorry for you. Hopefully Wargaming will improve their shit in the next season. The 8th offer really blew me away. Both for good reasons and for bad reasons. One of my personal favorite tanks ever, the Panther, just appeared, rebranded as a premium tank. If you don't know, this vehicle is one of my most played vehicles ever, but were removed from the tech tree many years ago. We knew this tank was in the game file, so we had expected this tank to make an appearance soon, but I had really hoped it to be this year's well-deserved reward instead. On the one hand, I'm really happy that the tank is back, but on the other hand, I feel cheated by Wargaming by having to pay for a tank in limited numbers as well that I could play for free back in the day. Oh well. Anyways, the offer was an auction for 3 million credits in 13,000 units, and for this bid you could actually see an indicator for how much the competitive bid was, which was nice. I think the M10 also had this feature, more of this Wargaming Plus. It seemed to be sold for around minimum 7 million credits though. I'm really happy for everybody who managed to get the tank, but for all the others, I just really hope you'll have a chance to get this tank elsewhere. The 9th offer was without doubt the most insane one though, the T22 Medium, which was, before Black Market 2021, the rarest tier 10 tank in the game and around the top 5 of rarest tank ever in the history of World of Tanks, as it was previously only obtainable through a set of practically impossible missions for a limited amount of time. Only an extremely low amount of people managed to do this, albeit a majority of them through questionable means. In the black market, it set a new record for expensiveness. It was an auction with a minimum bid of 15 million credits, but it would certainly go for much more money than that. I have bid 61 million and Edwin has bid how many millions?
73,900,000 and 2.
Here we go. Bids are no longer being accepted.
Come on, Wargaming. Give me the news. This bid has won.
Have you won?
Yep. Well, at least according to the game. How about you?
The bid has won, yes. Edwin and I managed to actually snatch this tank, and it was not directly a steal. The lowest the bid would go was around 41 million though. So this is definitely the most expensive tank ever sold in this game. Take note that this tank has been nerfed several times over the years and is most definitely not worth this much money for its capabilities on the battlefield. It has some funny features like having really good side armor, which make it an extremely good reverse side scraper. But other than that, it's pretty crap. The Tech Tree Russian mediums are better, and it's purely a nice tank to have in your garage for your tank collection. The 10th offer was a gold auction for the 50T prototype. It's a decent tank, and the minimum amount of gold anyone paid for it seemed to be around 5.5k gold, which is actually a steal. The 11th offer was the Foch 155 yet again. It's the second time it has appeared in the black market. It was sold for 20 million credits as a direct buy, and yet again the servers friggin' died when trying to buy this tank. Some of our friends had to click the purchase button almost 20 times before it worked. Wargaming Plus fix. The 12th offer was an auction for the premium IS-2, the Berlin version, for a minimum bid of 1 million credits. The minimum anyone paid for this tank seemed to be around 3 million credits, which is actually a huge deal for a premium tank. If you're a free-to-play player and did not already own a premium tank, this was a pretty good offer. The 13th offer was the Progetto 46, which is basically the most sought after tier 8 premium tank in the game, as it has the reputation of being the most competitive tier 8 tank in the game. It was sold on auction for a minimum of 7,500 gold. I could not get any concrete information about what the minimum bid went for, but I have heard around 10k gold, which is a pretty good price for the best tier 8 premium in the game. I saw a decent amount of people who spent a lot of gold on this tank though, and were heavily disappointed with the tank's performance on the battlefield. So let's make it clear right here and now. This tank is only the best tier 8 premium in the game if you, as a player, is very well experienced. If you're not very experienced, the 50 TP prototype or the Turtle 1 was probably a much better deal. So the 14th and final offer was an access key for 5,000 gold. If you purchase this key, you would get access into the secret warehouse, or should I call it the black market casino. At activation, you would get one of the previous black market tanks. So this includes literally every black market offer from the previous 2 years. If there was only one black market tank you were missing, you would most definitely get this tank. However, if there were a majority of tanks you were missing, the chances of getting a specific one that you might have wanted were a lot less likely. However, just like with the footlockers in the Waffle Tractor event, you could reroll up to 4 times for another chance, if you had enough credits for it. The first reroll set at a whopping 900,000 credits, and it only got higher from that. I was only able to reroll 2 times and got myself a Chrysler. I obviously wanted a Type 59 gold, but I didn't get it. By looking at other people's results, it seemed as if the more rare tanks had a less likely chance to appear, which makes sense as Wargaming probably wants to preserve the rare status of these tanks, so that they remain a sought after product. If you did not manage to get a specific tank you wanted after these 4 rerolls, there was not much to do really, as this black market casino key was only sold in 1 unit. However, if you managed to get a tank that you really wanted in only 1 single go without having to reroll, then 5,000 gold for a premium tank is a steal. A majority of players use this opportunity to try and claim the Type 59 gold, and a lot of players managed to get it, which has now created a new great influx of these vehicles into the game. It's hard to say exactly how many people managed to get this tank now, but since the access key was not limited in units for everybody, then there had to be a lot of players that managed to get the Type 59 gold now. I feel like it has kind of lost all of its rare status now, so that's kinda lame. That was all of the offers of this year's black market. Let's look at it holistically and evaluate the positives and negatives of this event. So, let's begin with the positives. Free-to-play players can get premium tanks for credits. So the black market enables free-to-play players a chance to get premium tanks for credits, which is a huge deal really. A premium tank for a free-to-play player really helps them push their economy in a good direction. Collectors can get previously unobtainable tanks / rare tanks, so if you didn't play the game back in the dawn of World of Tanks and you started playing a few years ago and you want to collect all the tanks, the black market is a great place to be able to try and catch them all, so to speak. Cool cheap 3D skins, so the 261 skin from previous year and this year's E50 skin were super cheap. They went basically for minimum price, basically just a nice and easy style grab, which is a plus. Getting tanks at never seen before prices. You could get premiums for credits and some premiums for gold, but very cheap if you were lucky. As there were many auctions, the prices were mostly controlled by consumers, giving you a chance of getting many goodies for very low prices, enabling you to save credits and gold. Creates hype for the game, so the black market really brings the community together, discussing the tanks on the offer, conversing about what possible tanks might appear next, the videos uploaded on YouTube, the memes, the streams. It's just a very interesting and hype atmosphere when the black market is live, and it's very cool. Endgame players get to spend their hard-earned credits on something. The type of players who have played the game for a really long time, have unlocked almost every tank in the game, can finally spend their credits that they have just been lying around for nothing really on maybe a sought-after, really rare tank, and some exclusive offers as well. All the black market tanks are back in the secret warehouse, so this secret warehouse let you have a chance of getting a black market tank you might have missed, which was nice. We'll obviously also talk about the negatives of this as well. And with that said, let's move over to the negatives. People might feel cheated by Wargaming when selling tanks that they have earned through clan wars / events, etc. So some of the tanks sold in the black market have previously only been available as rewards for completing certain events or campaigns, and it will obviously be quite a quick in the nuts if these tanks just become available for everybody for credits or gold when you have struggled to get these tanks through sheer skill alone previously. The Aufklul Panther should have been a well-deserved reward instead, or introduced back to the tech tree instead. So if you don't know, the Aufklul Panther was previously available in the tech tree as a tier 7 German light tank. It was never a good tank, but it was a strong meme that many players enjoyed playing because of its unique characteristics. It was a light tank capable of destroying tanks through ramming. It could also mount a derp gun, as well as having one of the funniest stock turrets in the game, the Leopard tier 5 turret. It was a tank that was loved by many people for many different reasons. We knew this tank was on the super test, so we knew it was coming back in some shape or form, but literally everybody had expected it to be a well-deserved reward that you would get for free. It was the option that made the most sense, because now by selling it as a premium in the black market, you're paying for something that many players already had in their garage back when the tank was removed, in limited numbers, in a worse state, because, you know, all the modules of the tank are removed. It just kind of feels like a punch in the gut, really. I love that the tank is back, but at what cost? A set global time for black market means annoying times. For us in the EU, the black market was 5 in the evening and 5 in the morning. 5 in the frickin' morning. I bet a lot of people's sleep schedules were completely f***ed up because of this. Although many offers were auctions, some of them were direct buys, which meant you still had to be there on time to not miss out on any offer. The irony with this was that literally all of the morning offers were auctions, so we all woke up for nothing, lol. Wargaming should have gone public with this information. Transaction errors, because black market has become so popular and mainstream now compared to the first and second iteration, combined with the fact that you now have a 5-minute wait time before you can do any direct buys. The servers completely broke when pressing that buy button, as literally thousands upon thousands of people are sitting and waiting for that direct buy. So even if you had the funds required to do a direct buy, it felt like pure RNG if you got the tank or not. An easy fix to this, and the having to wake up at 5 in the morning problem, is to make all of the offers auctions. Extremely simple solution. You will have more time to think, which will decrease anxiety for the event, and you will have more time to sleep, which will decrease stress for the event as well. Also, since the direct buys had a 5-minute wait time before you could buy, people also used this time to convert gold to credits for real money, and then simply did not get the tanks because of server errors. So they literally spent real money for nothing, which is just insane. Auctions should simply be for every offer. The we said QL should have been a style. Simple negative, really. Paying several millions for a fancy crew trainer with a fire effect doesn't really feel great. Lol. It cannot be fixed, but a simple negative. A ridiculous amount of money was thrown around in this event. The escalation from the last year's black market and this year's black market was really too great. Even though you sat with 100 million credits before this year's black market, you were not safe if you wanted a chance to take part in the most rare offers like the we said and the T22. Previously, the black market has been designed for investing all the credits people received from their Christmas event, but this time it simply was not enough. No matter how good the offers are, people seem to be complaining about each and every one of them. So I would like to say that the black market is pretty much the best purchases and offers Wargaming has ever done in this game. Many of the offers were a complete steal in comparison to the premium shop offers. Some people are still upset over many of these offers. I guess they want a golden waffle tractor for 1000 credits. If you discount the direct buys with all the transaction errors, which are most definitely an error on Wargaming side, and only look at the auctions, the prices are completely controlled by the community. We make the prices here. If you didn't get a tank, it was simply because you did not bid enough money, and that's it. The secret warehouse promoted gambling. I'm probably gonna call it the black market casino from now on. Lol. So even though it was nice to be able to get a previously missed black market tank, this feature was even banned in some countries where gambling is illegal, which just proves its gambling nature. So a lot of players were actually left out from this offer completely because gambling is banned in their country, which is just... They're excluding a part of their player base because of this, so that's a really shitty move. So they really should be able to introduce a feature where you still have a chance of getting an old black market tank without gambling. And also this secret warehouse black market casino, it kinda de-rarified many tanks, like the Type 59 Gold is basically not rare anymore. Kinda underwhelming now when literally everybody is driving around in a Type 59 Gold, kinda feels lame. That's all the positives and negatives. There are many thoughts and opinions about the black market. Some people hate the black market, some absolutely love it. Personally, I'd say it's very difficult to just paint it black and white. Get it? Anyways, personally I think the black market is generally very exciting, it brings the community together, and there are a lot of interesting memes and discussions surrounding it. But with that said, I think the concept is better than the execution. Wargaming definitely still have to make some improvements before my opinion is mostly leaning towards the positive. Now that we have discussed this year's black market, we're gonna focus our sights on the future. What tanks might appear next in future black markets? To answer that, first have to take a look at what tanks are actually on the menu. Let's move on to part 2. So, the main slogan of the black market has always been no rules, especially when it comes to the tanks sold. There have been, for example, premium tanks sold at never seen before prices, for example tier 8 premiums for credits. There have been extremely rare tanks sold at ridiculous prices, such as the A32 and the T22, and then there has been exotic crazy tanks that we have never seen before, such as the Type 59 Gold and the WZ11QL. I have noticed a set of patterns when it comes to these vehicles though. The premium tanks sold have always been tanks that at some point have been available to the public, so no super test tank or press account tanks, and exotic tanks like the Type 59 Gold and the WZ11QL have actually been available in the game but on another server, the Chinese server. This year's black market also opened up a new set of rules though. The Panther, for example, which for new players might seem like a completely new and exotic tank, but it's actually a very old tech tree tank that got removed from the game, now rebranded as a premium tank. And the M10, albeit being just another low tier premium tank, is also a tank that has been available in the Bond shop. And finally, they have been selling reward vehicles such as the T22. All of these tanks could be categorized into 5 different categories. Normal premium tanks, usually sold for never seen before prices, such are for credits such as the TL1. Rare premium tanks, usually sold for a ridiculous amount of money, such as the A32 or the SU-76I. Imported premium tanks, tanks that have been only available in a certain server, for example Type 59G and WZ11QL. Reward vehicles slash bond shop tanks, the M10, T22, Foch 155 and the Death Star. And finally, removed tanks rebranded as premium tanks. The only example of this is the Panther. I'm gonna discuss all of these categories and see if we can identify certain vehicles that might have a chance to appear in the black market in the future. Now, most of you guys are probably already aware of the most common normal premium tanks out there, so I don't think we need to discuss them much. But let's take a look at what tanks could fit into these respective categories in order. So firstly, rare premium tanks. So let's compile a small list of the rarest premiums currently on the European server. Take note that this will most likely differ from region to region. So firstly we have the Kanonen Jagdpanzer, which we have mentioned before in the previous video. So after the introduction of the Kanonen Jagdpanzer 105, which in most people's opinion is a better variant of this tank has never been sold again. M40A2 Raumpanzer, or as it's better known as, the Shovel. I'm not surprised at all that this tank is rare. It's probably one of the worst tier 8 premiums, and it's not been sold much at all. I think the best promotion this tank has received is by us here at AwesomeEpicGuys, as we regularly meme around in this tank for fun. I can barely even remember Wargaming themselves promoting this tank. Presumably, it was meant to be a reward for the Halloween event 2019 that never happened. So instead, it was just dropped as a random premium tank without any promotion whatsoever. So yeah, it's up there as one of the rarest tanks in the game. Then we have the T-103, the Shonk Tonk. I'm not sure why this tank is so rare. It's a pretty fun and memey Soviet tank destroyer. I guess it simply has not been sold a lot. I must say that this tank is extremely underrated. The M4A2E4 Sherman. I did mention this vehicle in the last video as well, but this tank is still on the menu as one of the most legendary vehicles of the game. It's one of the first premium tanks ever introduced to the game and was awarded to all players who played at least 1000 battles in the World of Tanks beta testing. IS-2M. This vehicle has actually been sold in a premium store a few times, but is so indistinguishable from all the other IS-2 tanks in the game that it usually just fly over people's heads and people simply don't buy it. For that reason alone, it has become one of the most rare premiums in the game. Then we have the Losas M4A2 Sherman, which is the Russian Sherman, which we have also mentioned in the previous video. I only remember this tank being sold a very few times. It pretty much just suffers from the non-interesting syndrome like most other uncommon premiums. Then we have the Object 244. This tank is probably more common on other servers than EU, but on EU it has only been sold once, I believe, due to its generally pretty underwhelming characteristics and non-unique gameplay style. Nobody really bothered to buy it. And then we have the T42, also known as the Boys tank, which was Wargaming's epic collaboration with the Amazon Prime show, The Boys. It was so epic that literally nobody bought this tank, lol. And has therefore become one of the more rare tanks in the game. And finally on this rare tank list, Panzer 58. So this vehicle has technically been in the game for a very long time in the form of the Panzer 58 Mutz and the Zwhatsh Panzer. This is the non-skin variant, which has only ever been sold once, during Act 3 of the World of Tanks 10th anniversary. There was also the option to transform your Mutz into a Panzer 58 as well. Apparently this was such a non-popular thing to do that the Panzer 58 is now pretty much the rarest tank in all of World of Tanks Europe. That has ever been available to the public, that is. That's pretty crazy. So if you own any of these tanks as a European player, you can officially call yourself an epic gamer. Moving on to import premium tanks. This is where things get pretty whack. Now, it has to be addressed that the only imported vehicles that has ever appeared are the Type 59 Gold and the WZ-111 QL, which are essentially just tank skins. But the last black market scrambled around the rules so much that I would not be surprised if Wargaming wants to import tanks which are completely unique vehicles and not just skins. Let's take a look at what kind of vehicles these could be. First we have the ISU-130, which on most servers have always exclusively been available on press account as a super test vehicle of sorts. But on the NA server it has been sold, I believe, 2 times in total. This vehicle is an ISU-152 with one of the most unique guns in the game. It has premium rounds that have less penetration than the standard round, but more damage. We have actually played this vehicle in the past on European press accounts, but never had the privilege to own one ourselves. Then we have a pretty mysterious tank, the T-44-122. I have seen countless of videos of this tank on YouTube, but I really can't find any concrete information about its true background. The only information I have managed to dig up is that it's, quote, was handed out as a reward for moderators in the World of Tanks community. What kind of moderators or what they did is unknown to me, but as it seems, it has never really been available to the public, except for these moderators, of course. However, I've also seen community contributors getting rentals of this tank for content creation purposes, like Skill4 who 3-marked this vehicle. I can't really pinpoint this tank's true existential status, if it's a reward or premium or whatnot, but I thought I'd mention it here just as a fun little trivia. The next few tanks are pretty infamous for good reasons to some and bad reasons for others. They are the anime tanks. The Edelweiss and the Nameless, which from what I know are only available on the Asia server. So these tanks are of course purely fictional, based 0% in history. They are a collaboration with World of Tanks and the video game series Valkyria Chronicles. When these tanks were introduced to the game, they were a real hot topic. Some people absolutely loved them, but a vast majority absolutely hated them for their non-historical nature. It's not as if there are no other non-historical tanks in World of Tanks. The Chinese tank destroyers are pretty much just fiction, and some of the Japanese heavy tanks are pretty fictional as well, but at least they all blend in pretty smoothly with the general style of World of Tanks. They look like they could be a part of an existing historical event, while these enemy tanks look like they belong in a, well, an anime. I'm pretty unsure if Wargaming would want to introduce these tanks in other servers due to their low popularity, but the one and only opportunity I could see for these tanks to go live in other servers would be in the black market. Since they would be sold in very low amount of units, they would not really be a big presence in the game and would not really hurt the general style of World of Tanks as much if they would be sold normally. But that's a discussion for a whole other video. Let's move on to the next category of tanks. Reward vehicles / bond shop tanks. So, the reward vehicles we have seen in the black market are first and foremost tier 10 tanks removed from the tech tree, like the Death Star and the Foch 155. But also now, recently in the last black market, the T-22 medium tank, which before this black market was one of the rarest tanks in the game, but for bad reasons really. It was a reward for completing a set of missions for an event game mode, but the missions were so insanely difficult that most people was simply not able to complete them. The only people who did manage to complete them were riggers. With this said, the only real contender for a removed tech tree tier 10 tank that could be in the black market is the FV215B. This vehicle is also a bond shop tank though. I am not sure if that's problematic or not, but other bond shop tanks have been in the black market too, like the M10 and the Hydrostat. My theory is that when a reward vehicle is introduced in the bond shop, that vehicle is deemed irrelevant by Wargaming, and what happens to it is not really an important matter. So I don't think we will see Clan Wars reward vehicles that are not present in the bond shop in the black market. So not until they are available in the bond shop do they have a chance of appearing in the black market. But that is of course just a theory. A game theory. But for example, the M60, the 121B and the KV-4 Krevslavsky could be going into the black market. The KV-4 Krevslavsky is one of the most rare vehicles on EU, by the way. It's up there with the Type 59 Gold and the Su-76I in rarity. Perfect black market material. There is one reward vehicle in particular though that I wonder could have a chance. That is the T-95E2 American medium tank. This tank was a reward for the Recruit a Friend 1.0 program. Essentially, if you invited a friend to play World of Tanks via the recruitment program and they collected a total amount of 1 million experience to reach tier 10, you, as a recruiter, would receive this rare American premium tank. In 2019, however, Wargaming remade the Recruit a Friend program to include more common premium tanks instead. So the T-95E2 is currently an impossible tank to get, kind of like how the A-32 and the Su-76I and others were impossible to get between their first release and the black market. It's not up there with the legends in terms of low ownership, but it's still a very rare tank to see on the battlefield. I think there's a small chance for this vehicle to appear in the black market. Let's move on to the final category of tanks. Removed tech tree tanks rebranded as premiums. There have been two real cases of this happening. The most recent one is now the Panther in the black market. The one before that was way back in patch 0.6.5, which was the case of the T-23, which was the American tier 8 medium tank of that nation's medium line, which eventually got replaced by the Pershing. The T-23 eventually got reintroduced as a Clan Wars reward vehicle the T23E3. It's pretty stinky though and not super rare, but I think it could have a shot at being in the black market, since it's an extremely irrelevant vehicle and is basically a collector's tank at this point. Now my question is this: can this happen again? Can any old removed tech tree tank get reintroduced as a premium, as a black market exclusive? If the answer is yes, let's take a look at what tanks have been removed from the game and could be reintroduced. T18 Tank Destroyer. So this tank was the seal clubber back in the day. Imagine a tier 2 T95 going at like 50 kph. Yeah, very balanced. This vehicle ultimately got the biggest nerf a tank could ever get. It was transformed into an artillery piece, the T18 HMC. It was also bumped up a tier as well. They could reintroduce the T18 Tank Destroyer as a tier 2 premium, hopefully in a nerfed state though, lol, as to not completely destroy the game. Then we got the SU-122-54, which was the tier 9 vehicle of the old Bobject tech tree. The 263 was the tier 10 of the line back then, and the Bobject did not exist. But as the Bobject got introduced at the tier 10, the SU got removed and the 263 became the new tier 9. I never played this tank back in the day, so I don't really know what it's all about. But if it were to reintroduce, it would be one of the few tier 9 premium tanks in the game. And then finally, of course, do I dare to say it? The Waffle Tractor of E100. We did recently get it as an event type of tank. I'm not sure if this means that its chances of being an actual tank in the game are completely gone or not, but let's say if they made it into a tier 10 reward tank, sold in the black market, people would go wild, either from excitement or from rage. If this was the case, I hope they would introduce a nerfed variant to not completely break the game, just as with the T18. I also want to mention a bunch of vehicles that are currently in the game files, because if I don't, I have a hunch that people will tell us that we forgot to mention these. On the screen right now, you can see a line of vehicles that are currently hiding in the game files. There is a majority of tier 9 vehicles, which is quite odd as they are usually giving out as rewards from completing events. So I guess there are gonna be a lot of events in the future, ? Currently we have no idea what Wargaming plans of these are, but I can confidently say that there is currently like 0% chance that these things will appear in the black market, as completely new vehicles have never made an appearance in the black market. If they were to appear, they must be first introduced to the public somehow. Unless Wargaming wants to scramble the rules of the black market. Again, the slogan is no rules after all. I will let you guys do the speculation of what Wargaming's plans of these vehicles might be. And with that said, we conclude our rare tank and oddities discussion. Let's move on to the prediction part. So, we have discussed and compiled a lot of vehicles now. If you feel like I missed any vehicles, however, please do let me know in the comments below. But now, it's time to evaluate their chances of actually appearing in the black market. But first, let's take a look at our previous year's predictions. So the tanks that we accurately managed to predict were the A32 and the WZ-111QL. The T78 is pretty funny because it went from being one of the rarest premium tanks in the game to be one of the most common ones just because it was in the Christmas boxes. It has also been sold plenty of times in the premium shop since our last video, so it's kind of lost all of its rare status by now, so I think all of its black market chances have disappeared. The Losa, the Kanonen and the M4 is still on the menu. The ISU is a little iffy, but we'll get to that. The 113 Beijing Opera is also still plausible. It's essentially a skin for the 113 from the China server, but a separate tank. Now, for this video's prediction, I have made this scale of high probability to low probability, and I will simply place the tanks that we have discussed in this probability scale. So let's go from low probability to high. First, we have the SU-122-54 and the T18 Tank Destroyer, which are currently not even in the game. I could only really see them having a chance if they would get enough community interest. The T-44-122 is currently in a very grey area. Wargaming have bent the rules in the past when it comes to selling tanks that probably should not have been sold again. But again, I don't think this tank is very marketable for Wargaming, as only very few people know about this vehicle and what it's about. Secondly, we have the IAC-130, which is available on the NA server, so this tank appearing in the black market there would be a no-brainer, but for it to appear on the other servers is completely outside of my knowledge what its chances are, so I'm putting it down here really. Then we have the anime tanks, which I discussed earlier. Since they are so unpopular, I think their chances of appearing on other servers are low, so I'm putting them down here. Then we have the Waffle Tractor, which you would think I'd put at the very bottom since it's not in the game at the moment. But the tank has been an event mode tank, as well as being playable on the China server and the console version of World of Tanks, so the tank has a strong reputation. So I think this tank has a high probability of being reintroduced as a premium, or well, higher than the others at least. Then we have the Bond Shop reward tanks. I placed them here because it's still pretty unclear to what Wargaming's opinion about selling these tanks outside the Bond Shop is. As they have been Clan Wars rewards in the past, there might be a problematic situation about selling these tanks for credits or gold, but this is still unknown, so they go down here. Then we have the IS-2M, Object 244, Panzer 58 and the Lhasa Sherman, which I would like to call rare but dull and non-marketable premium tanks. I'm sure many collectors want at least one of these vehicles to complete their tank collection, but they are simply so boring and non-appealing for the rest of the player base that it's not worth much for Wargaming to sell these tanks. But I still think at least maybe one of these vehicles could have a decent shot. Then we have the T95E2 and the T23E3, which are old reward vehicles. These tanks are not competitive at all, so selling these vehicles to everybody would not really harm the game in any way, and I see them as both a nice buy for collectors and at least a decent buy for everybody else. The 113 Beijing Opera is pretty plausible, the Type 59G, the WZ-111QL, and this vehicle was kind of the holy trinity of Chinese style tanks on the Chinese server. So after the Type 59 Gold and the WZ now being implemented into the black market, I think this vehicle has a pretty good shot. And then at the bottom, the Kanonen Jagdpanzer. I place it here because while not being a very sought after tank, it still has more fans than the other mediocre rare premium tanks. It's also a pretty historic and recognizable vehicle, so I think it will gather a decent amount of sales if it were to be sold in the black market. The Shongtonk and the Shovel. I placed them here because they are tier 8 premiums with decent marketability, as they have some unique, interesting aspects to them. Then we have the FV215B, which I am honestly surprised have not been sold in the black market as of yet, since the Foch 155 and the Death Star has been sold already. It is in the Bond Shop currently, so that may be a factor to why it hasn't been sold in the black market, but since they sold the M10 recently, which is also in the Bond Shop, I don't see a huge reason to why it has not been sold other than not being a very sought after tank. Then the M4A2E4 Sherman, which I think is almost a guarantee to appear. Last year we had the Su-76I, this year we had A32, and we will for sure have the Sherman next year as the new legendary collector's tank from the olden days of World of Tanks. And finally, on top, the T-42, the boys tank. I'm almost 100% certain that they will sell this tank in the black market next year, especially after seeing the TL1 in this year's black market. I think Wargaming probably were not really happy with the poor sales of the T-42 and are most likely going to try and push more sales of this vehicle. It's a tier 8 premium after all. And that concludes the black market probability prediction. At the end of the day, it's really impossible to answer exactly what tanks will appear in specific black markets. So I thought I'd present it in this format instead, to kind of just draw a larger picture of what tanks we can potentially expect for a future black market. And it has been very fun to discuss this topic with you guys. Now, these vehicles presented here are only the rare premium tanks that could potentially be in the black market. But there is also one more question to answer, which is what common sought after premiums will appear in the black market? And this question is even more impossible to answer really, because the answer is basically the tanks that are the most profitable according to Wargaming. But I'll compile a small list of tanks that I have not seen in previous black markets, which I believe would be very profitable tanks. And they are the E75 TS, the KV2R, the Defender, the Object 703-2, the Renegade, TS5, CS52 Liss, the Somewhere SM, and the Bisonte. And this concludes our rare tanks and black market discussion for this year. Now, I want to know, what did you think of this year's black market? Were you satisfied or were you upset? What tanks did you buy? And what do you think might appear in next year's black market? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.